project. Plywood presents the Known Project. Your 5 minutes begins now.
Okay, guys, I have a list of notes that was to give a pitch, but I don't normally give pitches, and this is not really natural for me. So there might be a lot of stories, and there might be a lot of interruptions, but I'm just going to go for it. Right now, this is true story, true confession. I'd rather be sitting at home with some elastic pants on, watching Netflix and scrolling Instagram, amen, than standing here or than interacting with a lot of people, because people make me nervous. I avoid the awkwardness of conversation. And I'd rather be comfortable, or like those kids in Dance 411 and just jam into some music, but not talking. We noticed that, my husband and I noticed that you go out to eat at any restaurant, and what will you see but families with their phones in front of them, people on dates, more like they're dating their phone than they're dating each other, that there's just a huge problem of distraction. Even right now, every one of you wants to check your email like 7 times while I'm talking. You and I know it, we have a problem. We need to engage each other better. We need to connect and have deeper relationships, and yet we avoid the awkwardness of it. The problem is our disconnect, and me putting a slide up. The problem is we are lonely, we are disconnected, and we have some pretty shallow relationships. I believe the connection we need starts with questions. And we need a culture that asks more questions and engages each other in real time and space. We have an online culture where we can create a curated and edited self, but it's the real self that gaffes and makes mistakes and trips. And that's the real person that has real needs that needs to be met at dinner in real time and space. And I believe all of this is building into, we need to be curious about each other. We need to ask more questions and be interested in the other person in front of us. So we created the Known Project. My husband and I realized that a lot of people wanted to go there. A lot of people want to know each other more deeply, but don't know how to start. So we feel the need to connect, but we don't feel like we have the resources and tools to do it. So we came up with this little book called Well Known, and it's 5 levels of questions of increasing depth to know people, to jump levels with somebody. We also have created recently these flip questions that are up there, and these questions, I just heard a great story from someone that they use them at their workplace, and they have a question of the day at their workplace. And so everybody knows, you come in, what's the question of the day? Those questions are a little bit, we would call them level 1 or level 2, not as deep, so we're not gonna ask your greatest fears when you walk into work. But there's something like, what's your go-to dance move? And you know, the mom moves, and we got all sorts of stuff. So it's a great way to build culture of starting to ask questions and engage with each other. So we have a lot of questions that we love to ask, from easy things like, what was your worst haircut experience, and bucket list items, to, here's a more personal one. If you had to give a disclaimer about yourself before entering into a relationship, what would that disclaimer be? Yikes. My husband's like, don't overshare right now, Kaitie. Don't go there. But I think the interesting thing is that if we could ask each other questions and create that space, then it would build compassion for each other in our stories, and we could leave conversations feeling richer for it and feeling known by it. The questions are meant to engage the humanity in all of us, believing that our honesty is sometimes our greatest gift we can give people, and that we all need healthier relationships, and that is the problem, I think, of a digital age. People have used these books, the flip questions, in small groups, date nights. We had one great story of a mom who was trying to grow closer to her daughter, and so they started a journal where they would answer each question, one question a week, and they would respond to their questions in the journal. But my favorite story comes from a friend recently I visited, and I'm sitting at the table. She's about to have a baby. Her due date was in a couple days. We went out to Mexican, because what else do you do all the time but go out to Mexican? And I'm sitting there with her husband, and I know that plywood's coming up, and I'm thinking we could talk about World Cup, and we could talk about the weather, or I could ask one of those crazy questions from my book that people know I'm gonna ask. And so I leaned into the awkwardness of it and I asked her husband, what are you most afraid of in this new season of life? And he said, funny enough, what I was most afraid of my whole life is to be married. I was afraid I could never keep a marriage. My parents' divorce wrecked me, and so being married and finding it to be the greatest joy of my life is such a gift, and I can't wait to bring a child into that. I watched as his wife listened, and her eyes lit up, and it was this beautiful moment that I could have never created. I'm so glad we didn't talk about the World Cup as much as I love World Cup. Yes, that's a win. So how can you be a part of it? You want to be a part of it. You can go out in the lobby. You can buy a little book. You can buy the flip questions and bring it to your work. You can be part of leaning into that awkwardness with me and joining the conversation and drip by drip, disrupting the distractions we all have and changing and initiating the conversation. We'd be so excited for you to be a part of that. Thank you so much for your attention. I can't tell you enough how much it means. Now more than ever, your attention is the greatest gift of generosity.
So good. You're great. That's awesome. All right, Jen, question for Kaitie.
Yes, thank you, Kaitie. You did an excellent job. I couldn't agree more about the importance of questions. My question for you would be that it seems like there are similar products in boutiques and have questions and games. How would you differentiate yourself in that way?
I love it. My husband is a counselor, and so we came up with the questions in light of a counseling setting, really hoping that we could bring counseling into the world. And so the questions we went after as we looked through, we didn't want a game. We didn't want to feel gamey. That was number one. This is not a game. This is a way of life, and this is something like a DNA that we want families cultures to grab onto. So the questions are meant to engage on a deeper level and enter into a little bit of more uncomfortable conversation. So that's our big goal, is that we don't stay on level 1, but we go to level 5. We also believe there's so much more work to do with the Known Project, and we have an app that we'd really love to create. And if somebody had lots of money and they just want to pour it on me, I would take it right now, and we could serve people better with it. But that is all to come, people, and it will happen. But yes, we do feel like it's different.